I thought he was just another passenger. Then I realized no one else could see him. I was halfway through a red-eye from Portland to New York when I noticed the man in seat 12A. The flight had been delayed twice, and by the time we finally took off, most of the cabin had surrendered to exhaustion. Lights were dimmed. Windows shut. Nothing but the occasional cough or rustle of a blanket to remind you that 200 people were drifting 35,000 feet above the earth. I had the aisle seat, 12C. The window was empty when I boarded. Middle seat too. I remember that clearly because I thought I hit the jackpot, a whole row to myself. But halfway over the Rockies, I woke up cold. Freezing, actually. The air around me felt wrong. The overhead vent was off, and I was still wrapped in the flimsy Delta blanket, but my teeth were chattering. That's when I noticed the man sitting at the window. 12A. He was angled slightly toward me. Pale. Wearing an outdated gray suit. His hands rested perfectly still on his knees, and he was staring through the window like he wasn't really looking at anything at all. I blinked groggy. "Oh, sorry," I mumbled. "Didn't see you sit down." He didn't respond. Just kept staring out the window, unmoving. I figured he didn't hear me. Maybe he didn't speak English. Whatever. I shifted, trying to warm up again. But I couldn't. The cold was worse now. Like it was radiating from him. I looked again. His face was expressionless. And his skin, no exaggeration, looked like wax. Smooth, colorless. Slightly translucent under the cabin lights. The kind of skin that doesn't sweat. Doesn't blush. Doesn't breathe. Something about him made my stomach knot. I leaned out into the aisle, looking down the row toward the flight attendants. A few were chatting quietly near the galley. No one else around me seemed to notice him. I turned back, and he was looking right at me. His head hadn't moved. His shoulders were still angled toward the window. But his eyes? Locked on mine. Wide. Unblinking. I nearly yelped. Instead, I looked away, pretending to fiddle with the seat back screen. I could feel his stare like static on my skin. Okay. Deep breaths. Maybe he's just weird. Socially off. I've flown with worse. But then the woman behind me tapped my shoulder. I jumped. She offered a polite smile. "Hey, sorry to bug you," she whispered. "Is your row still empty? I thought I saw someone move up there." My mouth opened, but nothing came out. She looked past me. "Oh," she said, frowning. "Never mind." I turned. The window seat was empty. No one was there. Just the crumpled blanket, slightly indented like someone had been sitting there seconds ago. I looked back at the woman. She gave me an awkward smile and sat down again. I didn't sleep the rest of the flight. I didn't press the call button right away. Something told me not to. Instead, I sat there, bolt upright, hands gripping the armrests, eyes locked on the empty seat beside me. I tried to tell myself I'd just imagined him. That maybe I'd been half asleep. That turbulence had jostled me awake and I'd seen a shadow, or dreamt a face. But the cold hadn't gone away. It sat around me like fog, clinging to the edges of my jacket, leaking under the collar. No one else on the plane seemed to feel it. The seat back screen flickered, even though I hadn't touched it. For a brief second, the map glitched, our flight path zigzagging erratically across the Atlantic before blinking back to normal. I rubbed my eyes. Maybe I was going crazy. I looked across the aisle. Row 11 still had the sweet older couple who'd smiled at me during boarding. Row 13 had a dad and his daughter, both asleep. Everything was normal. Except 12A. I leaned over, cautiously, and reached out, just to touch the headrest. Just to prove to myself it was empty. My fingers brushed it, and hit something cold. Like metal, but softer. Damp. I yanked my hand back. There was a dark smear across my palm. Greasy. Black. I wiped it on my jeans, trying to steady my breathing. This was insane. I finally hit the call button. A few seconds later, a flight attendant approached. She was young, maybe late 20s, with perfect posture and that forced calm they train into airline staff. "Hi there," she whispered. "Everything okay?" I hesitated. My mouth was dry. Was someone sitting here?" I asked, nodding at 12A. She glanced at the empty seat, confused. "No, you had the row to yourself, didn't you?" I nodded slowly. She leaned in, voice quieter now. "Was someone bothering you?" "No," I said quickly. "Just, never mind. Sorry." She gave me a look like she didn't believe me, but nodded. "Let me know if you need anything." As she turned to go, I saw it again. The reflection. In the airplane window, faint and warping with the curve of the glass, I saw him. The man in 12A. His head was turned toward me. His face was still. But there was something wrong with the reflection. It wasn't synchronized. While the seat remained empty, the reflection moved, just slightly. The man's head tilted. His mouth opened. Not to speak, but to stretch, jaw dislocating slowly, like an animal preparing to swallow something whole. I jerked back in my seat, heart racing. And then, just as quickly, it was gone. Only my own reflection stared back at me now, pale and wide-eyed. We landed at JFK around 6:03 a.m. I practically sprinted off the plane, avoiding everyone's eyes. I didn't look back once, not at the seat, not at the cabin, not at the flight crew. But as I was walking through the terminal, dragging my suitcase, something made me glance over at the arrivals board. Our flight was listed. Flight 327, final arrival, 6:03 a.m., 200 passengers. I stopped. Stared. That wasn't right. There were only 199 passengers booked. I checked when I picked my seat. Row 12 was supposed to be empty. I asked the gate agent nearby if the passenger count was automated. She gave me a weird look. "It's pulled from the boarding system automatically." "Why?" I didn't answer. That night, back in my apartment, I couldn't sleep. I left every light on. Watched dumb sitcom reruns at full volume just to keep the silence out. But somewhere around 2 a.m., I dozed off. And I had this dream, or what I hope was a dream. I was back on the plane. But it wasn't flying anymore. It was underwater. The windows were dark, murky, and the cabin was flooded with that same icy cold. I turned my head, and there he was. Sitting in 12A again. Only now, he wasn't pale. He was bloated. Wet. Decaying. His eyes were gone, just sunken sockets, and his jaw still hung open. I tried to move. Couldn't. He leaned forward. And whispered, "We never landed." I woke up screaming. Still do sometimes. And now, every time I fly, I refuse to sit in row 12. I never take the window seat. And if I ever find myself alone in a row, I don't look at the window reflection. I don't speak to anyone who wasn't there when I boarded. And neither should you. Because the man in seat 12A. He's still flying. Just waiting for someone else to notice that I thought losing cell signal in the middle of nowhere was just annoying, until the static started speaking. You ever drive through one of those remote stretches of highway where the bars on your phone vanish completely, and for a few minutes, the world just stops existing? Yeah. That's where this started. I was moving across the country for a new job, west coast to east, solo road trip. Everyone said I was crazy for doing it alone, but I wanted the silence. Wanted to feel like I was shedding my old life, mile by mile. By the third day, I'd crossed into a dead stretch of Kansas, miles of nothing but wheat, sky, and two-lane blacktop. Beautiful, in a bleak kind of way. No towns for hours. Just the occasional highway sign or rusted-out barn. My GPS warned me ahead of time that I'd lose signal soon, so I downloaded the next chunk of the map. I wasn't worried. Until my car stereo started glitching. At first, it was just soft static. I figured the FM signal was cutting out, normal in the middle of nowhere. I reached over to kill the radio completely. But before I could, the static shifted. It pulsed. Not like white noise, but like breathing. I slowed the car. The stereo crackled again, and this time, I swear to God, it whispered something. Low. Raspy. Words that didn't quite form in the right order. Almost like a voice learning how to speak again. I killed the stereo. Silence. Then my phone, no service, lit up. One notification, unknown airdrop request. Don't look at the hill. I slammed the brakes. I hadn't seen a car in over an hour. No houses. No buildings. Nothing. I looked around, heart pounding. There, about half a mile ahead on the right, was a hill. A small rise in the landscape, covered in dry grass, with something dark on top. A figure. It looked like someone, standing still. Watching. I didn't look long. I threw the car in reverse. Maybe it was stupid. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was survival instinct on overdrive. But I turned around. Sped back the way I came. Only, I didn't get far. A minute later, I passed the same hill. Again. Still on my right. Still with the figure on top. Same pose. Same exact distance away. Like the road had looped. Except it hadn't. I pulled over. Opened the GPS. Still no signal. I stared at the screen like it might conjure a way out. That's when the stereo turned itself back on. The volume climbed slowly. Then fast. Screaming static. Howling. And buried inside it, layered too deep to separate. A voice. It said one word. Turn. I looked to my left. A narrow dirt path I hadn't seen before now cut off the highway. Overgrown. Barely wide enough for a car. But I didn't think. I just hit the gas and swerved onto it. The path was awful. Potholes. Mud. Broken branches scraping the sides of my car. But the noise stopped. Everything went still again. And after 10 minutes, the road opened into a clearing with a single building, an old gas station. Long abandoned. The kind of place you'd see in a slasher flick. But I didn't care. I parked fast. Jumped out. Just needed to breathe. And that's when I saw him. The figure from the hill. Standing at the edge of the clearing. Now closer. Now real. His clothes were wrong. Like someone playing dress-up in layers that didn't match. An old mailman's jacket, a butcher's apron, bare feet. His face? I still can't describe it. Not because I don't remember. But because I shouldn't. My brain stutters every time I try. Like something rewires my thoughts to protect me. He raised one hand. Not in a wave. Not in a greeting. But like a puppeteer yanking a string. And behind me, inside the station, something moved. There was a sound. Wet. Shuffling. Like raw meat being dragged across tile. I ran. Didn't think. Didn't grab my bag or my charger or the snacks I'd bought back in Colorado. I dove into the car, locked the doors, and reversed down that broken path so fast I nearly snapped the axle. I didn't look at the hill again. Didn't check the mirrors. Didn't stop driving for 3 straight hours. And when the signal finally returned, I had no new messages. Except one. Airdropped from unknown. It said, "You looked." I called in sick my first day on the job. I didn't tell them why. Didn't mention Kansas. Or the man. Or the station. Or how I can't listen to static anymore without breaking into a sweat. But every now and then, I get a blip in my phone's signal. Even in full coverage areas. Just for a second. And when I do, I don't look out the window. I don't turn around. And I sure as hell don't stop. Because out there somewhere, there's still a hill with something watching. And next time, I might not get the warning that I stayed at a cheap roadside motel in Arizona. The manager gave me room 103. The key said 104. The room number on the door had been scratched off completely. It was supposed to be a quick detour. I'd been driving from Vegas to Albuquerque for a last-minute gig, freelance photojournalism, nothing glamorous, just some weird roadside event they needed covered. A minor festival in a minor town. But I was wiped. The stretch of highway I'd been crawling through was lined with scorched hills, half-dead cactus, and a kind of sun that turns glass into fire. When I saw the flickering sign for the Sunset Inn, I took the exit without thinking. I'm not picky when I'm tired. The place was straight out of 1974. Faded turquoise paint, dusty vending machine out front, a single rusted ice machine that sounded like it was growling. But it had a neon vacancy sign, and the lobby had AC. That was enough. The manager was this wiry man in his 60s, gray wisps slicked back like they were trying to remember being hair. He wore a dusty collared shirt buttoned all the way to the top. No name tag. "You alone?" he asked as I stepped up to the desk. "Yeah," I said, already pulling out my wallet. "Just need a bed and a door that locks." He smiled. "Too wide. That's all we offer." He handed me a brass key with a long plastic tag, room 104. But the room he led me to? The door had no number. Just 4 holes where the plaque used to be. I pointed at it. "This isn't 104? He didn't miss a beat. "We renumbered after the fire. It's 103 now. Don't worry. Still just for one." My gut twinged. But again, I was exhausted. I nodded, thanked him, and stepped inside. The air was stale. Not gross, just wrong. Like no one had opened the door in years. The carpet was a washed-out red. The bedspread was patterned with little gold suns, faded and cracked. One of the chairs had a leg duct-taped back on. The TV was one of those thick, boxy things that buzzed faintly even when it was off. I dropped my bag. Peeled off my sweaty shirt. Collapsed on the bed with a sigh. And then I noticed the mirror. It hung on the wall across from the bed. Tall, narrow, old-fashioned frame. But the surface? Not glass. It looked like metal. Dull dark, like a sheet of polished iron. I walked up to it and tapped it gently. No reflection. Just a smear of light moving across the surface. I don't know why that bothered me more than anything else, but it did. I told myself the mirror was just corroded. Maybe the silver had warped or peeled. Maybe it wasn't even a mirror at all, just some vintage decoration. But when I turned away and walked back toward the bed, I saw myself. In it. Clear as day. Only, my reflection wasn't moving. I froze. It just stood there. Facing the mirror. Back to me. Still as death. I turned around again to face it directly. Empty. Just dull metal. But when I looked back over my shoulder, there I was. Still facing the mirror. Still not turning around. That night, I dreamed I was trapped inside a box. Not a coffin. Not exactly. Just a space too small to sit, too wide to feel. Pitch black, except for a faint glow behind me that I couldn't look at, no matter how hard I tried. I remember feeling watched. Not followed. Not hunted. Observed. Like I was the one behind glass. When I woke up, I was cold. The kind of cold that feels wet. Like condensation on skin. I sat up fast. The mirror was gone. I swear to you, it had vanished. In its place was an empty wall. Fresh paint, like something had just been hung there and removed. I got up. Walked over. Touched it. Still warm. Still slightly sticky, like glue behind wallpaper. And then, behind me, I heard a knock. But it didn't come from the door. It came from behind the wall. 3 knocks. Soft. Even. Waiting. Last night the mirror showed a version of me that didn't move. Today it's gone, and something just knocked from inside the wall. I backed away from that spot like it had teeth. I didn't even remember grabbing my phone, but suddenly it was in my hand. No signal. Of course. Middle-of-nowhere motels don't tend to have 5 bars and fiber. I opened the door and stepped out, half expecting the motel manager to be standing there. Empty walkway. Just wind rustling through the brittle palm fronds. The parking lot buzzed with heat. I went straight to the front office. No one behind the desk. Just the faint sound of a radio playing somewhere in the back. Old country, scratchy and warbling like a ghost humming through a transistor. I knocked on the counter. Hello? No answer. I should have left right then. Should have grabbed my bag and driven until the sun rose again. But something kept me there. Not fear, exactly. Not curiosity either. Something deeper. Like the motel had its fingers on the base of my spine and was gently pressing. I walked back to the room. But when I reached the door, it had a number again. 104. The 4 holes from the missing plaque? Gone. The door looked freshly painted, fresh enough that the number itself was still sticky to the touch. I stepped inside, heart racing. Everything was as I left it. Except now the mirror was back. But not where it had been. It was now hanging above the bed, tilted slightly down, so if you laid back, you'd be looking directly into it. I couldn't breathe. My bag was sitting open on the chair, just where I'd left it. Only now there was a folded piece of paper sitting on top of my clothes. I approached slowly, hands trembling. I unfolded the paper. 2 words. Lay down. I didn't. Not at first. Instead, I tried to open the door again. Locked. Deadbolt jammed. The knob spun, but the latch didn't budge. The window? Nailed shut. Phone? Still no service. I was trapped. I turned to the mirror again. The glass was dark. Clouded. But behind the distortion, something moved. My reflection? No. Not me. Not exactly. It wore my clothes. Had my face. But the movements were delayed. Like watching a broadcast with bad signal. And then it smiled. But I didn't. I swear to you, I wasn't smiling. It was. That mouth, my mouth, curled up slowly, like it had just learned the motion. Teeth too wide. Lips too thin. Like the expression didn't belong on my face. Then the lights flickered. The mirror cleared. And I saw something behind me. In the reflection only. A shape. Standing at the foot of the bed. Blackened arms. A face like melted wax. No eyes. It raised one finger. Pointed to the bed. Lay down. I wish I could tell you I did something heroic. That I smashed the mirror. That I kicked the door down. That I fought whatever was trying to crawl into my skin. But I didn't. I laid down. I don't know how long I was in that bed. Could have been hours. Could have been days. I remember staring into that mirror, watching my other self, my not self, stand beside me. It leaned down. Whispered something I'll never forget. You're not the first. I woke up in my car. Parked on the side of the road, miles past the Sunset Inn. No bag. No receipt. Nothing. I turned around to go back, but there was no exit. Just desert. No sign. No motel. Just heat. And silence. I've searched online. Checked every map. Talked to locals. Nobody's heard of a sunset inn off Route 18 near the Arizona line. But sometimes, just sometimes, when I'm on long drives at night, scanning for somewhere to rest, I'll see a flicker of turquoise in the distance. A warm vacancy light. A door without a number. And I know it's calling me back. Room 104. Room 103. Rooms for 1. My sister won a free cruise. She brought me along. On the 3rd night, our cabin door opened by itself, revealing a hallway that wasn't part of the ship's map. First off, I'm not a cruise person. I get seasick. I hate crowds. I can't relax when I know there's no land for miles in any direction. But when my sister called me, practically hyperventilating because she'd won a free cruise for 2, I couldn't say no. Just come, she said. It's 5 days. Free room. Free food. Drinks. You could use the break. So I went. The ship, the St. Odessa, was older but huge. Real Titanic vibes, if the Titanic had a casino and all-you-can-eat shrimp. There were 9 decks open to passengers, most packed with restaurants, shops, and pools. Our cabin was on deck 3, lower than I liked, but I wasn't paying. The first 2 nights were fine. We drank. We danced. We even did karaoke, badly. It was the first time in months I'd seen my sister that happy. But on the 3rd night, something changed. It started with a weird noise. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to this low, rhythmic thump. Like something was knocking on metal far below us. I figured it was just the ship creaking or the engines doing their thing. But it didn't stop. And it was getting closer. My sister was out cold, one arm thrown across her face like a corpse in a murder mystery. I sat up and listened. Thump. Pause. Thump. Closer now. It didn't sound like it was coming from outside the ship. It sounded like it was inside the walls. I got up and opened the cabin door. And there it was. A hallway that didn't belong. It stretched ahead like a gullet, long, narrow, dimly lit by flickering overhead bulbs. Not like the rest of the ship at all. No bright signs, no carpet, no cheesy paintings. Just rusted pipes and bolted steel. I looked back into the room. Everything was normal. The little laminated map of the ship was still tacked to the wall near the door. I pulled it off. There was no hallway outside our room. Just a wall. The map showed it clearly. But the hallway was still there. My brain was screaming. Nothing about this made sense. Maybe I was dreaming. Maybe the late-night rum punches were catching up to me. But then I heard it again. The thump. Closer. Followed by a drag. Like something being pulled along the floor. Heavy. Wet. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe I just wanted to prove to myself it wasn't real. I stepped into the hallway. The second my foot hit the floor, the door slammed shut behind me. Hard. I turned around, panicked, and found a different door in its place. No cabin number. No handle. Just a porthole. Fogged over. From inside. I banged on it. Yelled my sister's name. Nothing. The hallway stretched on behind me. And then I heard it. Something breathing. Shallow. Wet. Close. I turned and started walking, fast. No idea why. Just knew I couldn't stand still. Couldn't wait. The air grew thick, damp, and oddly cold the farther I went. I passed pipes that dripped steadily into grates. The lights flickered. Every few feet, I saw another door, metal, rusted, no handles. Just portholes, each one fogged over. And inside each one? A shadow. Not people. Not quite. Things. Pressed up against the glass. Breathing. Like they were waiting. Watching. The hallway shouldn't have existed. But the thing breathing behind the portholes, that definitely did. I kept walking. Faster now. But no matter how far I went, the hallway didn't change. Same rusted pipes. Same low hum in the walls. Same doors, evenly spaced. Each one marked with a tiny number etched into the metal. A 01. A 03. A 05. Odd numbers only. I stopped at a 09. Something was tapping on the other side of the glass. Not random. Rhythmic. Like it was spelling something. I leaned closer. My breath fogged the glass, and for a split second I saw it. A face. My face. Staring back at me. But wrong. The mouth too wide. The eyes all pupil. No whites. Just black. It grinned. And then it began to mimic me. It raised one hand, my hand, and pressed it to the glass. I staggered back, heart pounding, and as I did, all the portholes down the hallway lit up. Figures inside. All of them grinning. All of them me. I ran. Didn't think. Didn't breathe. The hallway twisted, and suddenly I wasn't sure if I was going deeper into the ship or deeper into something else entirely. I passed a sign etched into the metal. Drowning is a gift. What the hell does that even mean? My hands slapped against walls looking for seams, exits, anything. The corridor curved again and opened into a larger chamber, circular, like the base of a lighthouse. Pipes ringed the walls. In the center, a hatch. Sealed. Covered in wet handprints. And hanging beside it? A coat hook. With my sister's sweater on it. Soaked. Still dripping. My blood froze. I hadn't woken her. She'd been asleep when I left. There was no way she'd followed me. Unless she'd been here before I ever opened the door. Unless this whole hallway wasn't a place, but a trap. Something called us down here. I grabbed the sweater and turned. And that's when the hatch began to creak open. Bolts turned, slow and groaning. Steam hissed from the seams. Water pulled at my feet, black and thick like oil. And something was rising. Not swimming. Climbing. A hand appeared first, human-looking, but webbed. Gray. Skin blistered like it had spent too long under pressure. Then a face. Her face. But not her. It wore her expression, her eyes, her lips. But the movements were wrong. Too fluid. Like someone remembering how to move a body. It looked up at me. And smiled. "You left the door open," it whispered. I backed up. Slipped. Fell hard. It didn't lunge. It didn't run. It stepped out. Tall. Wet. Smelling of salt and something ancient. It crouched over me, head tilting, and pressed a cold finger to my chest. And said, "Your room's ready." That's when the wall behind me split open like a mouth. A rectangle of black. And I fell through it. I woke up in the infirmary. Back on the ship. A nurse hovered over me. My sister sat nearby, eyes puffy from crying. "You had a seizure," she said. "Collapsed outside the cabin. They found you on the floor." I looked around. Room 306. Not 103. No rusted hallways. No steel portholes. No breathing copies of myself behind glass. Just a ship. Just a dream. But when I reached down, my hand brushed something tucked into my hospital blanket. A room key. Metal. Etched in brass. A 09. I never sailed again. But sometimes, when I sleep near water, even just the sound of it, I dream of the St. Odessa. Of that hallway. Of all the versions of me I left behind, smiling in the dark. Still tapping on the glass, waiting to be let out. My best friend and I went backpacking deep into Olympic National Park. We took a wrong turn near mile 14. But when we tried to backtrack, the trail behind us had changed. There's a rule when you hike in deep wilderness. Leave no trace, take only memories. But what if the trail leaves something in you? My friend Cam and I had planned the trip for months. We both needed a break, him from a brutal breakup, me from burnout so thick I was forgetting my own middle name on Zoom calls. We decided on Olympic National Park because it felt remote, untouched, and impossible to overhype. It lived up to it. The trees were ancient, moss hanging like skin off their bones. Everything dripped. Every rock had a name, if you listen long enough. We started on the Ho River Trail, 23 miles out and back. We were planning to camp overnight near the Blue Glacier overlook, then head back. We made it about 14 miles and before things got weird. We'd taken a detour, barely marked, looked like a game trail. Kem spotted a pair of stone stacks, like mini cairns, leading off the main path. He said they were probably trail markers. I said they weren't. We went anyway. It felt like it looped back toward the main trail at first, just a shortcut. But an hour later, the forest changed. Subtly. The light shifted. The air thickened. Sound got muffled, like hiking through a church full of moss. I kept expecting to hear water or birds, but there was nothing. Just our boots crunching dead needles. I asked if we should turn around. Kem hesitated, then said, "Let's go 10 more minutes. If we don't find the trail again, we head back." We never found it. And when we turned around, the trail behind us wasn't the one we'd walked in on. The cairns were gone. The underbrush denser. No footprints. Just wilderness. Raw. Untouched. Like we were the first people to ever breathe there. We panicked, quietly at first. Took turns checking GPS. My phone? Dead. Cam's? Still had battery, but the map glitched every time we moved. No service. No compass. He dropped a pin and said, "We'll loop back to here if we get turned around." We never reached that pin again. The real spiral started when we found the ribbon. A strip of red fabric tied to a branch. Kem saw it first and grinned. "Trail marker," he said. "People do this all the time." We followed it. Then we saw another red ribbon. Then a third. Then, the first one again. Same knot. Same frayed edge. Same branch. We walked in a circle. Except we didn't turn. Not once. Just a perfect loop. We tried the old trick, pick a direction, any direction, and bushwhack in a straight line. We used the sun to stay steady. We walked for 2 hours. When we stopped, we were standing next to that same goddamn ribbon. Kem laughed at first. Nervous, forced. I didn't. I just stared at the tree it was tied to. Because the bark was peeling off in a way I'd seen before. Back when we passed it the first time. That night, we made camp. Not because we were tired, but because we were scared to keep going. Kem built a fire. I laid out the tarp. We didn't speak for a long time. The forest was dead quiet. Like something was listening, and didn't want competition. Around midnight, I woke up to leaves crunching. Kem was gone. I sat bolt upright, hard hammering. His flashlight was still there, resting by the fire. But no Kem. Just the whisper of trees shifting overhead. And then, his voice. Distant. Muffled. Like he was yelling through water. "I found something." I grabbed the flashlight and followed the sound. I found him about 50 yards off, crouched near the base of a massive cedar tree, staring at something in the ground. It was a backpack. Half buried. Moldy. Torn. Inside were clothes. A water bottle. An old, half-rotted sleeping bag. And a phone. Cracked. Caked in dirt. But when I turned it over, it was Cam's. The same case. Same scratches. Same crack from the time he dropped it at a gas station in Nevada. Cam didn't say anything. He just stared at it. Then finally, "That's not mine." He turned to look at me. And I swear to God, for 1 second, it wasn't his face. We found a copy of Cam's backpack buried in the woods. Then he turned toward me, and for 1 second, he wasn't Cam anymore. The flashlight trembled in my hand. Cam was still kneeling. Still staring. But something had shifted behind his eyes, like something else had slid in, just beneath the surface. Like a mask starting to slip. Then he blinked. And it was just him again. "Let's get back to camp," he said quietly. I didn't argue. We left the rotted bag where it was. The fire had gone out by the time we returned. Everything was colder. Heavier. We didn't speak much. Just crawled into our bags and tried to sleep. Tried. That night, I dreamed I was lying on the forest floor, unable to move. My arms and legs weren't tied, they just didn't respond. Above me, in the branches, were figures. They didn't climb. They hung. Dozens of them. Swaying. Watching. One dropped silently from the trees. Landed inches from my face. It looked like Cam. Only it smiled too wide. And leaned in to whisper. "You were supposed to feed it." I woke up choking. Cam was gone again. But this time, so was his gear. His bag. His tarp. His coat. Everything. Only his boots remained, lined up side by side, facing the trees. I yelled for him. Over and over. Nothing. I tore through the woods, retracing steps I'd taken 100 times now. Always back to that damn ribbon. Always back to that tree. I ran until my legs gave out. Collapsed near a stream, shaking. That's when I heard the humming. Soft. Low. Male. Cam's voice. I followed it, barefoot now, boots left somewhere behind. And there he was, standing in the middle of the stream, up to his knees in freezing water. Smiling. Not at me. At something behind me. I turned. No one. Just trees. When I turned back, he was gone. I don't remember how long I wandered. I think I passed out at some point. Hunger and exhaustion hit like a drug. My thoughts turned to static. But eventually, I stumbled onto a trail. A real one. Marked. Clear. 2 hikers found me a few hours later, dehydrated and barely coherent. The rangers brought me out by helicopter. Said I was damn lucky. They asked if I was alone. I told them yes. I said nothing about Cam. I just wanted it to be over. But here's the thing. They never found his body. Not a shoe print. Not a boot. Not a scrap of clothing. Like he'd been eaten whole by the woods. Or traded. 3 weeks later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a red ribbon. Tied in the same knot. Frayed the same way. And a photo. Me and Cam. Standing next to each other. But the version of me in the photo? Had no eyes. Just 2 black pits. And behind us? Hanging from the trees? Dozens of copies. All smiling. All me. I don't hike anymore. I don't camp. I don't go near woods that don't have cell phone towers nearby. Because if you ever find yourself deep in the wild, and you take a wrong turn, don't follow the trail markers. Don't trust your friend's face. And for the love of God, don't look up.